I never thought a simple home security camera could unravel the quiet life I'd built in my suburban corner of Ohio. It was one of those rainy Tuesday evenings in early fall, the kind where the leaves stick to the driveway like forgotten secrets, and the neighborhood settles into that familiar hush after dinner. I'd installed the camera 6 months ago, right after a string of petty break-ins hit the block. Nothing major, just kids testing locks or raccoons rummaging through bins. The app on my phone pinged alerts for motion, but most nights it was just the wind rustling the oaks or the neighbor's cat prowling the fence line. That night, though, as I scrolled through the footage before bed, something caught my eye. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m., hours after I'd locked up and turned in. The infrared glow painted my backyard in ghostly greens and blacks, the patio furniture still and shadowed under the overhang. But there, in the corner of the frame, a shape lingered. Not a blur or a glitch. It was deliberate, almost posed. A figure, tall and indistinct, standing motionless by the garden shed. No approach, no retreat. Just there, watching the house. My house. I paused the video, heart picking up a notch, and replayed it. The shape didn't move, not even a sway in the damp breeze. It could have been a trick of the light, a branch I'd overlooked, but something about the way it filled the frame felt off, like it knew the lens was there. I shook it off, chalking it up to exhaustion from a long day at the office. Rewind, delete, sleep. That's what I told myself. My name's Alex Harper, 34, single, and comfortably routine in this 2-story colonial on Elmwood Drive. The house was a fixer-upper when I bought it 5 years back, a divorce settlement from my ex-wife, who preferred the buzz of Columbus to the slow pulse of our small town. Now it's mine. White siding, a manicured lawn I mow every Saturday, and a kitchen that smells like fresh coffee every morning. I work remotely as a systems analyst for a logistics firm, staring at screens all day in the spare room upstairs. Life here is predictable. Grocery runs to the Kroger on Main, Friday nights at the local diner with a burger and the game on TV, waving to Mrs. Ellis next door as she tends her roses. It's the kind of normal that lulls you into security, makes you forget the world beyond the county line. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds like nothing had happened. I brewed my coffee, checked emails, and glanced at the camera feed out of habit. All clear. The backyard looked ordinary. Dew on the grass, birds flitting between the feeders. I even stepped out to inspect the shed, half expecting to find a footprint or a snapped twig. Nothing. Just the faint scent of wet earth and the distant hum of a leaf blower from down the street. I laughed it off over breakfast, probably a deer or the mailman's shadow from the night before. These cameras catch everything, I reminded myself. False positives are part of the deal. But as the day wore on, little things started to nag. Around noon, while I was on a conference call, I noticed my desk lamp flickering. Not the bulb dying, no, it was steady. Then a quick stutter, like someone had brushed against the switch. The room was empty, door closed. I ignored it, focusing on spreadsheets, but when I hung up, I swear the stack of mail on the hall table had shifted. The envelopes I'd left aligned that morning now fanned out slightly, as if browsed and replaced in haste. Coincidence, right? Draft from the vent, or maybe I'd bumped it myself without remembering. By evening, the unease had settled in my chest like a low fog. I avoided the backyard, opting for takeout from the pizza place on Route 42 instead of grilling like usual. As I ate in the living room, the TV droning some true crime rerun, I pulled up the app again. No new alerts, but curiosity won out. I scrubbed back to that 2:17 clip, zooming in on the figure. In the grainy feed, it was clearer now. Not animal, not plant. Humanoid. Cloaked in darkness, head tilted slightly toward the window. My window, the one overlooking the patio. A chill ran down my spine, not from fear exactly, but from the realization that it hadn't triggered the motion sensor until it was already there, too still, too aware. I paced the kitchen, phone in hand, debating whether to call the non-emergency line. What would I say? My camera saw a ghost in the yard. Instead, I double-checked the locks, drew the curtains early. The house felt larger then, echoes amplifying in the quiet. Upstairs, in bed, I lay staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, replaying the footage in my mind. Was it a neighbor, a prank, or something else slipping through the cracks of my careful routine? Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by every creak of the settling foundation. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed, a motion alert. Heart pounding, I fumbled it open. The live feed showed the backyard empty, save for the wind chimes tinkling softly. But as I watched, a shadow flickered at the edge of the frame, gone before I could process it. I sat up, straining to listen. Silence, thick and unbroken. Just the house breathing around me. The next day dawned too bright, mocking my vigilance. I called in sick, spent the morning reviewing every frame of footage from the past week. Most was mundane. Squirrels, cars passing on the street, me locking up at night. But there, time-stamped 1:45 a.m. 3 nights prior, another glimpse, fainter, farther back near the fence. And the night before last, a silhouette by the garage, lingering just long enough to unsettle. Patterns emerging, uninvited. I hadn't noticed them before because they blended into the ordinary like stains on a familiar shirt. Doubt crept in as I sat at my desk, the cursor blinking accusingly. Was I imagining connections? Stress from deadlines, maybe, or the isolation of working alone? The neighborhood was safe. Block watches, community barbecues. Yet the feeling persisted. A whisper that someone or something was mapping my world from the shadows. I resisted the urge to confront Mrs. Ellis or check with the police app's community forum. Instead, I adjusted the camera angle, added a second one facing the side yard. Precautions, I told myself, just to be sure. By afternoon, the mail arrived, bills and junk, but one envelope caught my eye. No return address, postmarked locally. Inside, a single photo, my house taken from the backyard at dusk. The timestamp on the back, yesterday, 6:32 p.m. I'd been inside cooking dinner, oblivious. My hands trembled as I set it down. Not a threat, not yet, but a message, clear as the lens that had captured it all along. The photo sat on the kitchen table like an unwelcome guest, its glossy surface catching the late afternoon light, filtering through the half-drawn blinds. I stared at it for what felt like minutes, tracing the familiar outline of my patio chairs and the shed in the background. The angle was precise, taken from just beyond the garden bed, where the grass met the wooden fence. Whoever snapped it had stood there long enough to frame it perfectly, capturing the house in that golden hour glow before sunset. No people in the shot, no cars in the driveway, just my home, exposed and ordinary. But the timestamp on the back, scrawled in neat black ink, turned it into something invasive. 6:32 p.m., the exact moment I'd been chopping onions for stir-fry, the radio humming oldies in the background. I didn't touch it again. Instead, I slid it into a drawer out of sight and poured myself a glass of water, hands steadying against the sink. The yard outside looked peaceful, birds pecking at the seed I'd scattered that morning. No sign of disturbance, no footprints marring the soft soil. It could be a mistake, I reasoned. A neighbor's kid playing photographer, or some real estate scout snapping comps for the market. Elmwood Drive wasn't immune to that. Houses turned over every few years, families chasing bigger yards or better schools. But the lack of any note, any explanation gnawed at me. Why my house? Why no return address? Evening crept in slowly, the sky bruising to a deep indigo as I microwaved leftovers and settled into the couch. The TV flickered with a documentary on unsolved mysteries. Ironic, I thought, muting it after 10 minutes. My phone lay on the armrest, the camera app open but idle. No alerts since that false shadow at 3 a.m. I resisted checking the footage again. afraid of what patterns I might find if I dug deeper. Instead, I scrolled through the neighborhood forum on the community app, searching for mentions of odd mail or sightings, posts about lost dogs, garage sales, the upcoming fall festival at the town square. Nothing out of the ordinary. Mrs. Ellis had shared a photo of her pumpkin patch, commenting on the unseasonably warm weather. I almost messaged her, asking if she'd noticed anything strange, but deleted the draft. What if it drew attention, made me seem paranoid? Sleep evaded me that night, the house amplifying every small sound. The refrigerator's hum shifting pitch, a branch tapping the window like impatient fingers. I tossed in the sheets, mind replaying the photo's details, the way the curtains in the upstairs window hung just so, as if the photographer had waited for me to pass by inside. By midnight, I gave in and pulled up the app, reviewing the evening's feed. The camera had captured the mail truck pulling up at 4:17 p.m., the carrier dropping the bundle into the box without a glance toward the house. Routine. Then hours of stillness until 6:32, dusk settling, the sensor picking up the fading light. No motion triggered, no figure entering the frame. If someone had been there, they'd moved like a ghost, silent and unseen. The next morning brought a crispness to the air, the kind that promised changing leaves along the county roads. I forced myself into routine. Shower, coffee, a quick jog around the block to clear my head. The neighborhood stirred gently, Mr. Patel waving from his porch as he fetched the paper, kids biking to the elementary school 2 streets over. It felt solid, reassuring, the American dream distilled into quiet streets and waving flags on mailboxes. Back home, sweating lightly, I checked the mail early. Just ads and a utility bill. Relief washed over me, brief but real. Maybe the photo was a one-off, some harmless anomaly in an otherwise safe life. Work pulled me in after that, a deadline looming on a software audit. I hunkered down in the office, screens glowing, the outside world reduced to glimpses through the window. But focus fractured. Around 11 a.m., during a lull, I noticed the cursor on my monitor lagging, stuttering like the lamp had the day before. I rebooted, blaming a glitch in the router, but as the system hummed back to life, a notification popped up, not from work email, but the camera app. Motion detected, 10:58 a.m. I switched tabs, heart skipping. The live feed showed the backyard empty, but the recorded clip revealed a brief anomaly, a ripple in the air near the fence, like heat haze on a summer day. Though the temperature hovered in the low 60s, it lasted 2 seconds, then vanished. No animal, no wind strong enough to bend the grass that way. I paused, rewinding. There it was again, that subtle distortion, almost like a lens flare, but originating from the yard itself. Doubt flooded in. Was the camera malfunctioning? I'd bought a reputable brand, synced it to the cloud without issues for months. Shaking my head, I stepped outside to test the angle, phone in hand. The fence loomed solid, slats weathered but intact. No footprints, no trampled flowers, just the faint buzz of bees around the lavender I'd planted last spring. I laughed nervously, the sound echoing oddly in the open air. Paranoia, that's all. The photo had primed me, turning every shadow into suspicion. Lunch was a sandwich at the desk, eaten mechanically, while I scoured online forums for similar camera glitches. Posts about infrared artifacts, app bugs, even wildlife tricks of the light. Reassuring in a way. But as the afternoon dragged, another alert chimed, 2:14 p.m. This time, the clip showed something clearer, a shape at the far edge of the frame, near the shed. Not the full figure from before, but a partial outline, shoulder and arm, as if someone had leaned in briefly before pulling back. The timestamp overlapped with my lunch break. I'd been in the kitchen, back turned to the window. The figure didn't move toward the house, didn't flee. It just observed, then dissolved into the foliage. Isolation settled heavier now, the walls of the house closing in despite the open spaces. I paced the hallway, glancing at doors and locks, the photo drawer pulling at my thoughts. By dusk, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I drove to the hardware store on the edge of town, the familiar strip of shops blurring past, the diner with its neon sign flickering, the gas station where locals gathered for coffee. I bought motion lights, extra batteries, even a cheap lock for the shed, small fortifications against the intangible. Back home, installing them under the porch light, the neighborhood lights winked on one by one, casting long shadows across the lawns. That evening, as rain pattered against the roof, I sat with the curtains parted just enough to watch the new lights bathe the yard in steady white. The camera feed ran on my laptop, a vigilant eye. No alerts came, but the quiet felt charged, expectant. Around 9 p.m., a car passed slowly on the street, headlights sweeping the front yard. I froze, peering out, but it was just the Patels heading out, probably for their evening walk. Normal. Yet as I turned away, a soft thud echoed from upstairs, like a book slipping from a shelf. I climbed the stairs slowly, the wood creaking underfoot. The office door stood ajar, though I'd closed it that morning. Inside, papers on the desk were askew, the stack I'd aligned now slightly offset. And there, on the windowsill overlooking the backyard, a single leaf, damp from the rain, impossible to have blown in through the sealed pane. My breath caught, the room suddenly colder. Not a break-in, no forced entry, just displacement, subtle and deliberate, as if someone had stood there moments ago, breathing the same air. Downstairs again, I locked every door, the photo resurfacing in my mind like a recurring dream. The camera hadn't caught this, too internal, too close. The unease twisted deeper, a psychological knot. Was it all in my head, fragments of stress weaving illusions? Or was the watcher evolving, stepping from the shadows into the heart of the house? Rain drummed harder, blurring the windows, and for the first time, the familiar walls felt like a fragile barrier against whatever lingered just beyond. The rain had eased to a drizzle by morning, leaving the backyard slick and reflective under a sky the color of tarnished silver. I woke with a start, the dream fragmenting like fog, shadows in the upstairs hallway, a whisper I couldn't place. The clock read 6:42 a.m., earlier than usual, but sleep had been a shallow thing, broken by every gust rattling the gutters. Downstairs, the kitchen felt unchanged, coffee pot clean, counters wiped from last night's hurried meal. I moved through the motions automatically, grinding beans, filling the filter, but my eyes kept drifting to the window. The new motion lights stood sentinel by the shed, their plastic casings beaded with water, untriggered through the night. No alerts on the phone either. I checked anyway, scrolling through the overnight footage out of compulsion. Hours of monochrome stillness, the chimes swaying gently, leaves skittering across the patio like hesitant footsteps. The leaf on the windowsill upstairs. I'd tucked it into a napkin, hidden away with the photo, as if ignoring it might make it dissolve. Rational, I told myself, pouring the steaming mug. Houses shift, drafts carry things in ways you don't notice. But the doubt lingered, a quiet undercurrent pulling at the edges of my thoughts. Work emails piled up while I sipped, deadlines from the logistics team demanding attention. I logged in from the office desk, the second-floor room with its view of the treetops and rooftops stretching toward the horizon. The neighborhood sprawled below like a postcard. Neat driveways, American flags limp in the damp air, the distant outline of the water tower on the hill. It was the kind of scene that usually grounded me, a reminder of stability in this pocket of Ohio, where change came slow, measured in seasons and school years. But today, the familiarity grated, each house a potential vantage point, each window a possible eye. By mid-morning, focus splintered, a spreadsheet blurred on the screen, numbers swimming as my mind replayed the anomalies. The figure at 2:17, the ripple by the fence, the partial outline leaning in. I minimized the window and pulled up the camera app, zooming on archived clips. There, in the grainy feed from 2 days ago, another detail I'd missed, a faint reflection in the shed's small window, not of the yard, but something elongated, like a silhouette mirrored back. Not mine. I hadn't been out there. The timestamp 11:23 p.m., while I'd been downstairs scrolling news on the couch. Coincidence? Or a loop, the watcher watching the watcher? I stood, stretching, and paced to the window. The side yard looked innocent, the new camera I'd mounted capturing a wide swath of fence and hedge. No motion since installation. Down below, Mrs. Ellis emerged onto her porch, watering can in hand, her routine as predictable as the sun. She glanced my way, waving with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Or maybe that was my imagination twisting it. I waved back, forcing normalcy, but retreated quickly, curtains twitching shut. Isolation bloomed then, not just physical but mental, the house sealing me in with my suspicions. Who could I tell without sounding unhinged? The guys at the office, they'd joke about cabin fever, suggest a weekend in Cleveland for a change of scene. Lunch came and went, a turkey wrap from the fridge, eaten standing at the counter. The photo drawer called, but I resisted, opting instead for a walk around the block to shake the cobwebs. The air carried the scent of wet asphalt and distant wood smoke, neighbors' chimneys puffing lazily. I nodded to Mr. Patel raking leaves, his golden retriever trotting alongside, tail wagging. "Quiet night?" he asked, leaning on the rake. I murmured something about the rain, kept it light, but inside questions burned. Had he seen anything? Lights in my yard? The words stuck, unspoken. Paranoia. I chided myself, turning the corner. The street curved gently, passing the playground at the end of Elmwood, swings creaking empty in the breeze. Kids would fill it later, laughter cutting the quiet, but for now it echoed my solitude. Back home, the front door clicked shut too loudly, the sound reverberating. I checked the locks, double, triple, then headed upstairs. The office felt off, the air thicker, as if someone had exhaled there recently. The papers on the desk, still askew, but now the top sheet bore a smudge, faint and oily like a thumbprint. I held it to the light, not mine, too precise, centered on the margin. Heart thudding steadily, I wiped it away, but the erasure didn't erase the implication. Someone had been here, touching my world in increments too small for alarms, too subtle for proof. Afternoon dragged into a haze of half-finished tasks. Another alert pinged at 3:47 p.m. Motion in the backyard. I bolted to the laptop, the feed loading with agonizing slowness. There, a bird hopping along the fence, wings fluttering, false positive. Relief soured quickly into frustration. How many more? I delved deeper into the app's settings, adjusting sensitivity, reviewing logs. Patterns emerged in the data, spikes at odd hours, not random but rhythmic, like a pulse. 1:45 a.m., 2:17, 3:02. Not every night, but enough to suggest intent, a schedule woven into the dark. Doubt warred with certainty as the sun dipped low, painting the room in amber streaks. Was it external, a prowler testing boundaries, or internal, my mind fracturing under isolation? I'd always prided myself on logic, the steady code of my job mirroring the order I craved. But this unraveled it thread by thread. The photo, the leaf, the smudge. They pointed inward now, blurring lines between observer and observed. By evening, I skipped the diner run, ordering delivery from the pizza joint on Route 42. The driver left it on the porch. I watched from the peephole, the taillights fading into the twilight. Night fell heavy, the motion lights humming to life outside. I sat in the dim living room, laptop balanced on my knees, footage playing on mute. Shadows danced at the frame's edge, wind or will. Around 10 p.m., a new clip triggered. The side yard camera caught a sway in the hedge, branches parting briefly. No figure, but the gap lingered a beat too long, as if holding a gaze. I froze the image, enhancing contrast. There, in the negative space, an outline, vague, humanoid, retreating into the leaves. The house pressed in, every creak a question. I climbed to the attic access in the hallway ceiling, pulling the cord with trembling hands. Dust motes swirled in the beam of my flashlight as I peered up. Boxes of old files, holiday decorations, the ex-wife's forgotten quilt folded in the corner. Nothing moved, but the air up there felt stale, undisturbed for months. Or had it? A corner of the quilt hung askew, threads loose as if tugged. I backed down, sealing the panel, the ladder retracting with a snap that echoed like finality. Downstairs, the delivery box sat unopened on the counter, cheese cooling. I ate mechanically, flavors muted, mind elsewhere. The surveillance felt reciprocal now. I watched the feeds, but who watched me? The photo's timestamp burned in memory, 6:32 p.m., a moment stolen. Isolation deepened. The suburban hush outside mirroring the one within. No calls to friends, no posts on the forum. Just me, the screens, and the growing conviction that the boundary between my safe world and the unknown had thinned to transparency. As midnight approached, another alert, 11:59 p.m. The backyard feed showed the patio empty, but audio picked up a faint rustle. Footsteps? Breath. I turned up the volume, straining, static then clarity. A soft sigh, close, as if from inside the frame, not wind, not imagination. The sound looped in my ears, pulling me toward the window, curtains parting to reveal only darkness. But in that moment, the doubt crystallized into something sharper. A presence, patient and pervasive, echoing through the house like a memory I couldn't shake. The sigh hung in the air like a held breath, replaying on the loop I'd set in the app. It wasn't mechanical, no fan whir or distant traffic filtering through. Human, intimate, as if exhaled right against the microphone. I muted it quickly, the silence rushing back heavier than before. The clock on the laptop ticked past midnight. The house settling into that profound quiet where every tick of the settling beams feels like a countdown. I didn't move from the couch, eyes fixed on the screen, willing the feed to stay empty. The motion lights outside cast their glow through the curtains, turning the living room into a stage lit for an unseen audience. Minutes stretched, the drizzle picking up again, pattering against the panes like impatient fingers. I considered deleting the clip, dismissing it as a glitch in the audio pickup, maybe rain on the lens, or the neighbor's wind chimes tuned wrong. But the doubt had roots now, twisting deeper. The anomalies weren't random anymore. They formed a narrative, pieced together in my mind like code compiling into a program I couldn't debug. The figure at 2:17, the photo at 6:32, the leaf on the sill, the smudge on the paper, all timestamps aligning with moments I'd been alone, vulnerable in my routine, as if the watcher knew my rhythms better than I did. I stood finally, legs stiff from inaction, and wandered the downstairs, flipping switches to bathe the rooms in soft yellow light. The kitchen gleamed sterile, counters bare, except for the half-eaten pizza slice I'd abandoned. No shadows lurking in corners, no doors ajar. Upstairs, I checked the office again, the smudged paper now filed away in a drawer with the photo and the leaf-wrapped napkin. A makeshift archive of unease. The attic panel remained sealed, but as I passed the hallway mirror, my reflection caught me off guard. Eyes hollowed by fatigue, stubble shadowing my jaw. I looked like a stranger in my own home, the lines of isolation etching deeper. Sleep was out of the question. Instead, I brewed decaf in the kitchen, the machine gurgling like a reluctant confession. Sipping it black, I sat at the table, phone in hand, scrolling through the camera's full history, patterns sharpened in the dim light. Appearances clustered around the witching hours, but also daytime flickers I'd overlooked, the ripple at noon, the outline during lunch, and the audio logs buried in the settings, faint breaths on 3 separate nights, synced to those visuals. Not constant, but enough to suggest proximity, a presence orbiting closer. I cross-referenced with my calendar. Late nights working, early mornings jogging, gaps where the house stood empty, or so I'd thought. The realization hit slowly, not as a thunderclap, but a creeping fog, as I stared at the glowing screen. It wasn't just watching from outside. The intrusions had migrated inward, mirroring my movements in reverse. The shifted mail, the askew papers, the damp leaf. They required touch, presence inside the walls. How? No forced entry, no alerts tripped, unless... The watcher wasn't crossing thresholds. It was already embedded, woven into the fabric of the house like a dormant line in my code. I thought of the camera itself, installed by my own hand 6 months ago, synced to the app on my phone. I'd trusted the reviews, the seamless setup, but what if that trust was the entry point? A back door, invisible, allowing remote eyes to roam. My pulse quickened, not with panic, but a cold clarity. I opened the app's diagnostics, probing deeper than before. Firmware updates pending, it said. Security patch available. Routine, probably. But as I delved into the logs, an anomaly surfaced. Unauthorized access pings, time-stamped weeks back, masked as system checks. IP addresses local, bouncing through the neighborhood's shared Wi-Fi grid. Not hackers in some far-off server farm, but close, next door, across the street, or closer still. The photo in the mail, postmarked locally, the sigh on the feed, intimate as a whisper. Someone with access, perhaps borrowing my digital eyes to peer back at me. I set the phone down, the pieces slotting into a disturbing mosaic. The house wasn't just a shell, it was a panopticon, every corner catalogued by lenses I'd placed myself. The watcher didn't need to lurk in the yard anymore. They were in the stream, observing through the very tools meant to protect. Doubt flooded in. Psychological vertigo. Had I invited this, my vigilance summoning the shadow? Or had it always been there, patient in the suburb's quiet facade, waiting for me to notice? Dawn broke grey and reluctant, light seeping under the blinds like an intrusion. I hadn't slept. The night a vigil of frozen frames and replayed sounds. The coffee had gone cold on the table, the archive drawer mocking me from across the room. Outside, the neighborhood stirred, a car door slamming 2 houses down, the faint bark of Mr. Patel's dog. Normalcy resuming. Oblivious, I checked the feeds one last time, empty, serene. But as I closed the app, a final notification blinked. A still image captured at 4:13 a.m., the backyard shrouded in pre-dawn mist. In the center, not at the edge, stood the shed, and on its door, faint but unmistakable in the infrared, a mark etched lightly, like a symbol or initial. Not there yesterday, not random. I didn't investigate. Instead, I drew the curtains fully, the house dimming to a cocoon. The revelation settled, not as terror but a profound disquiet. The boundary between scene and seer had dissolved, leaving me adrift in a loop of mutual surveillance. Who was watching whom now? The camera's unblinking eye, or the one behind it, mine or theirs? I powered down the devices, the screens going black one by one, but the echo remained. A sigh in the silence, suggesting the observation continued, unseen, in the spaces between. The suburbs stretched on outside, safe and silent, but the quiet felt complicit now, harboring secrets in every shadowed lawn. And in that ambiguity, the true unease took root, lingering long after the lights went out.